The penultimate session for today is by Vu-Quan, Vice President, Culture and Brand, ASEAN at Vero. Vu-Quan comes with over 15 years of experience in various roles in creative industries and is keen on developing collaborative cultures by engineering governance, management and leadership programs, advising founders and leaders to help them develop excellence in their business. Today, as he joins us for Quorum, he will share insights on sustainability in the brand world. Joining him on stage after his keynote address will be Shibani Kumar, Creative Director on Purpose. And together, they will explore the nature of third-wave sustainability efforts, the deceptive practices of greenwashing, and how both consultancies and brands can be custodians to make a positive impact on our planet. Vu-Quan?
Hi, good afternoon. I've put my notes here in case I black out, because it's hard to focus. The conversations that are happening before this one are so inspiring that I have a lot of thoughts. So I'll try to focus and give you something of a good standard. So you have two questions, probably. Who is this guy? Why is he here? I start by answering those two. My name is Vu-Quan. I'm French, but I work in Vietnam. I've been there for 10 years. Besides my professional bio that you just heard, I'm also then a son of refugees. I raised 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl, and I have a wife who's entrepreneurial and who's dedicated to empowering women to embrace diversity of the ways they can live and work in Vietnam. So I'm surrounded by a lot of purpose. And on that note, the reason I'm here today is that I've been invited. Vero, my company, has been invited by our partners on Purpose. Hi, on Purpose team. Who are you? All right. Hey, Girish. Welcome. And on their invitation, we are here to talk about sustainability because what brought us together is an alliance. Our 2 companies have connected over the same concerns on the future of our industries and the future of our world. So I'd like to thank On Purpose for bringing us over. I'd like to thank the organizers here too for providing us such a great environment to have discussions in. I'll speak on behalf of actually 200 people who are spread across countries in Southeast Asia. So I hope that what I have to share today is interesting also for the Indian landscape. So we are present in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, and we have also a very strong team of partners who are based in Myanmar and are operating under our brand as well. And I'll also speak on behalf today of 2 colleagues who are joining me on this trip. There's Quang from Vietnam and Prang from Thailand. Hi, guys. All right. I made a promise to myself today is to not do the French thing, which is to say a lot between sentences. We do that, apparently, a colleague told me, a French guy too. He said, because French people interrupt themselves a lot, it's quite rude. So we developed a natural tendency to fill the blank space with a drone sound. So if I do it, please don't hesitate to say stop or raise a hand and think about it. Who we are, very quickly, about Vero. I'm not here to do too much promotion, but we are a consultancy focused on communication, and we work for brands. We believe that they can earn positive conversations through everything we do. We don't only do PR, we also do digital, we also do social, but we believe that they need to be made talkable for the right reasons. We believe that progress is something that is embedded in any corporate mission. So we're here to help them reveal those missions. This is a map of where we are, so I think I just addressed that. We win a few awards for campaigns, more on that later. We win also a few awards on best place to work and answering the last few questions. I know the room is on fire on the topic. We're considering seriously moving to 4 days work week. But it requires a lot of efforts, and I think the conversations that happened today were very exciting. I'm super open to chat with any one of you out there about those topics of workplace and culture. And so back to the reason we're talking about sustainability today and where we connected on values with on purpose. We are two of the very few agencies in the Southeast Asian and South Asian region to have taken the pledge called Clean Creatives. To keep it simple, what is Clean Creatives? It's a pledge for agency people and companies deciding to refrain and stop working with fossil fuel companies. The reason is we're not here to polarize the debate and say they're bad. It's really just a concern that we manifest and that we translate into action. We're concerned that there's a huge discrepancy between the communication. A lot of budget from that industry is going into telling stories of progress, telling stories of sustainability, telling stories of a great future awaiting us. However, the facts revealed by pretty solid research is that investments and acts are disproportionately smaller than communication. So for that reason, for the moment, we're not engaging with that industry as a statement. But we believe that conversation and I think events like this are moments where companies from any background, from any industry, from any sector, and agencies, communicators can have a constructive conversation about sustainability. So I'm a swiggle too. So back to my introduction, I'm a swiggle. So I like to imagine things. It's a good way to start thinking, right? So when I got the invitation to come to India, I said, all right, imagine you're going there, but it's 2043, 20 years away from now. And it's very exciting what AI can do now. It can help you picture all of this, even if you're not a designer. So we can see Taj here, maybe under a lot of sand. Maybe you'll see a lot of snow here. Or if we're going to Mumbai, it's a bit threatening to see this picture. So I don't want to sell a doomsday scenario. That's not constructive. What's constructive is to understand the landscape of sustainability efforts and communications about those nowadays. So the perspective I'll bring here might not include a lot of super insightful things about India. I'm sorry for that. But I know that a lot of the topics we talk about connect, and some signals that you can see here might relate to some that I will mention. So talking about the challenge on sustainability, a lot of people are making efforts. You have companies that are very sustainable or communicate very well about them. You have polluters who are greenwashing. And you have a lot of people like myself, and probably you are too, who are very confused about all of this. It's very tough for business leaders nowadays and communicators to figure out where to start, right? Because the topic is daunting. The scenarios are daunting. So how do we collect ourselves, collect our thoughts, and move forward? The main issue that's holding us back is something that you've heard about. It's greenwashing. But greenwashing is complex. It's not always even deliberate. Sometimes it's cynical, but most of the times, it's just the complexity of the topics, the complexity of the challenges to address and to fix that just makes everyone who attempts to participate at risk of falling into the pitfalls of greenwashing. So in the hopes of uncovering and helping professionals around here, maybe some of you already know about the 7 sins, but it helps to look at them again. These have been conceptualized a long time ago, but sustainability being a moving target, any professional in the room here might have known about these 5 years ago, or just yesterday, or maybe never heard about it and will hear about it in the next few weeks. So the 7 sins of greenwashing are very interesting. And they usually come from bright minds of communicators. So we have to deconstruct them. I'll go quickly through the 7. as they constitute kind of three poles. One is about the information. It's about the data. Providing no proof or being vague are the two top issues in greenwashing when it comes to treating information. When you work with journalists, when you're in the PR industry, you know how difficult it can be to put the right facts in front of the right audiences, right? But somehow still, either through PR, social media campaigns, or advertising, it's very easy to take shortcuts, sometimes, again, not deliberately, and use vague words. This is so eco-friendly. What does that mean? Or to make a statement, we are going to hit net zero target someday. Where's the proof? So there are ways to address those. We'll talk quickly about them in a few minutes. The other issues are more sophisticated. Hidden trade-off and lesser of two evils are rhetorical issues. They're also data framing issues. Hidden trade-off is very easy to execute, and we often might do it without knowing it. Hidden trade-off is when you mention something positive you're doing as a brand. You say, we have changed the way we source the paper we use. What you're not saying is, have you vetted the quality of your alternative and new solution? And sometimes it's a good story to say, press release, we've changed the material we're using in our product. People need to know about it. It's better than before. Is it perfect? Probably not. What I'm not saying is initiatives need to be perfect. What I'm hinting at is, how do we get an authentic communication and a genuine one about the progress we still have to make? The second one I was mentioning is also of the same type. Less of two evils. It's just a quick tactic that us communicators could use or would use very easily to make one of your initiatives shine, point another one from a competitor, from the landscape out there, that's worse. Say, I'm using this type of sustainable and ethical banking, but because the others are not. But then you forget you're doing also a hidden trade-off if you're not saying that actually for e-commerce you cannot use that solution. So those sins are often combined, like I just exemplified. Then some others are pretty obvious. If you walk around shelves in retail, you see a lot of labels. Some of them are true, some of them are certifications that are backed by data and scientific research. Some others are just a nice logo. So we need to be very careful of how to use labels, how to substantiate, that macaron that you're putting on packaging, but also, in other types of announcements. Then the two last ones I'll quickly mention are irrelevance and fibbing. Again, we're great storytellers. Some chief sustainability officers told me, we're great storytellers. That's the worst thing we can do when we come up with sustainable stories. When you tell a story, you can be irrelevant because you might mention something you have impact on, but that doesn't have impact on the environment or on society around. When you highlight a component of your product or service that has been legislated for or against already, but you're still promoting it, that's irrelevant in terms of timing. So there are many, many details that can be studied and deconstructed. And fibbing is just a less used word to say making up things, making false statements. So that's quite dangerous. So if we're part of the third wave of sustainability, and let me just quickly mention what that means, Vero and myself, we're quite late to the party. We have to be honest. We're only starting to think about it right now. So with all the experience that's around in the room and all the great talks I heard earlier, I think for the first time, I'm having imposter syndrome. But it's about the honesty of accepting that there have been sustainable efforts across industries for decades. The first one was driven by a need to address reputation. How do we make ourselves look better? The second wave was driven by actually economic efficiency. Investors would tell you, we can fund you better if you change the way you work. ESG is this whole industry of very technocratic ways to fix and actually improve businesses in terms of sustainability. The third wave, which I really will say I belong to, is just we're here because of urgency. There's urgency on several topics, on a lot of the sustainable development goals, and we just need to all contribute. So this is just a mind map here for people who just want to figure out where do they sit, where does their company position when it comes to sustainability. Are they already passing a lot of criteria and actually are strong in sustainability and communicate it well? Or are they somewhere in that field of either greenwashing, which is making efforts, doing better as a business model, but for many reasons, including being afraid of backlash, being afraid of greenwashing callouts, then those companies would refrain from actually communicating. They do the deed, but they'll keep silent, which is also too bad, because we know that businesses and the economy also grows with emulation. If we heard about what those companies are doing that's great, we could do the same. So greenwash is something we can think of addressing. Greenwashing is quite clear. I just enumerated 7 criteria that help to identify tactical greenwashing or sometimes even strategic greenwashing. And then I just made this up, but green painting is interesting because it's when you're close to being a perfect communicator. But there are some mistakes that are made along the way because, again, it's very easy to greenwash. So somehow we're saying green painting is just when not deliberately some mistakes are made, but you can improve. So this is something that you can do for yourself as a company or for your clients as an agency, or just when you're reviewing materials at large. So this one, I won't call them out. It's an Asian bank. I was browsing LinkedIn like everyone. And there was a video talking about greenhouse gas emissions. So because I don't want to call out the brand, I'll just try to tell you the story of what it says quickly. I'm a terrible storyteller. I was just watching this Netflix stand-up routine from Hannah Gatsby yesterday, and it gave me clarity. There are great storytellers, like those comedians, and there are people like me who just stack facts together in a way that sometimes it's clear and sometimes it's not. So pardon me for that. So this video is 2 adults from a corporate company, from a bank, actually talking to kids, educating them, 2 children, on what greenhouse gas emissions are and what their bank is doing to fight that. So it's quite a good effort, honestly. It's well produced. Let me highlight what was good. It was actually clear and concise. The information was very well written. The message was well written. However, if you look deeper, if you listen closely, you would see that at no point they were mentioning evidence on a video of 2 minutes. So we're not talking about a KV where it's hard to put all the info, the data, and charts in. This was 2 minutes, and there was no data. There was kind of a false labeling effort because they said, we have this project, it's called like that, and this is how we take carbon out of the atmosphere, and we're proud of it. There was an issue of relevance because they mentioned the footprint of companies, but they struggled to make a connection with the impact. Then on trade-off, there was an issue of ignoring the negative externalities linked to the way they finance businesses. So I'm not saying the banks are doing it wrong, but I'm saying how to tell a story about it is very sensitive. Because out there, citizens, professionals, are now more and more equipped to deconstruct and analyze and maybe, call out those efforts. So it's very interesting and important nowadays to be able to assess, pre-assess, and make contingency plans when we communicate on sustainability. There's a reputation issue at play, and there's also just a relevance and impact question at play. If you're doing great projects, it would be very bad, for the impact or for the engagement of communities around to be lost because they saw you post something once which was content that was a little shaky or shady. Whoops, moving on. Okay, so how can you make that assessment? I actually struggled at first. I had to make the assessment correctly, I had to do some research. I'm not an expert that knows everything comprehensively about greenhouse gas emissions, but the information is out there. So the problem is, how do we, in companies, bring that knowledge together? It's very tough. So the ongoing trends around the world now is to remove actually the sustainable department. Because sustainability being siloed in a team of experts within a larger business model will struggle to actually share that knowledge. How does a department actually have impact on sourcing, HR, retail, marketing, all of that at the same time? You need to basically distribute that knowledge. So the reason I'm talking about strategic choices here is that it needs to come from a strategic point of view. To be able to execute sustainable efforts efficiently and to be able to communicate about them positively requires governance choices. How you put teams together, how you distribute the knowledge within a company is determining of the quality of your efforts and of the communication that comes out. So that's why as a communication agency, we're very shy actually to talk about this because we can't do it alone. We have to also collaborate with management consultancies that can help companies shift those issues of governance. We have to work with clients who have a business to run, and sometimes it's very hard to decide that now is the moment to change strategic ways our companies are built. So that's one of the main challenges that we're currently facing. But a lot of questions also come about how do you accept that change? Accept taking on the challenge of changing the ways people are distributed, the way knowledge is distributed, changing the way we think about our business models, and the way we communicate about them. So I was talking to actually someone who's specialized in communications for an investment firm, focusing on sustainable SMEs. And we were saying the go-to strategy and tactics right now of those companies really investing in ESG is to look for the perfect story. They cram a lot of data into big PDFs, 70 pages, many charts, but besides the due diligence officers in the investment firms, no one understands what it's about. And if you read the founder's notes, usually, it's very positive. And I think earlier today we heard about the male lens, how it kind of encourages, educates us in many countries, I think, in aiming for perfection, aiming to dominate. right? When you run a business, you want to be the best, you want to beat the competition. So when you produce a communique to talk about sustainability, you want to do the same. You want to sound like the best at sustainability. Whereas we all know, no one's doing great yet out there, because climate change is still there. It's not going back, it's not going down. So what we're trying to suggest here and inspire is corporate vulnerability. How do we bring into the language we use, into the way we manage, some sort of modesty? That's why throughout my speech today, a lot of what I'm saying is, sorry, I don't know everything. Sorry, it's imperfect. Sorry, there are slides missing maybe. And sorry, I can't focus. So corporate vulnerability is really about not saying sorry, but about accepting responsibility and accepting that the challenges are ahead. That sustainability, just like entrepreneurship, is a work in progress. When you pitch to raise money, it's only promises. And when you start executing, it's never the perfect picture that you pitched in the first place. But you can come back to your investor and say, actually, we've done some progress. But here are the areas we need support to fix and to grow. So when it comes to sustainability comms and strategy for corporations, we believe that vulnerability is an asset in the future. I'll go quickly through this one, just being sensible on time. There's also a psychological thing at play. I was reading this historian, American, called Rebecca Solnit, who said it's very hard actually for folks like us to take action because of the anxiety. We read the reports, we know the data, we're quite progressive around the room here, but all the news we read are bad. A lot of the news we read are bad. So, and we have a double pressure. How do we fix that big thing, which is broken? And at the same time, we have pressure to perform. So the answer is, maybe we could look at shifting our values slightly. Entrepreneurship is great, growth is great, but how do we do that with a sense of riches are more diverse than we think? Riches are not only the usual things we thought. Comfort of mind, and I think another speaker this morning said, happiness. And when we talk about workplace culture as well, happiness is so important. If you can't cultivate that, you can't do this big deed that we're trying to do to fix the world we live in.
With the ongoing climate crisis, travelers are looking for options that are more sustainable and less damaging to our planet. But in Thailand, tourists feel like sustainable options are not easily accessible or locally relevant, despite 94% of Thai travelers believing that sustainable travel is essential. Enter Booking.com's Grow Green initiative. Grow Green is a two-part campaign inspired by sustainability techniques traditionally used in Thailand. For the first part, Grow Green Stay, Booking.com began work on building a sustainable carbon-neutral clay house to be reserved through their website. Booking.com took this a step further by partnering with Local Aroy, an enterprise that works with indigenous communities in Thailand to highlight their unique farm-to-table culinary offerings at the clay house, bringing an even more local edge to the entire experience. Within 10 minutes of being online, the clay house was fully booked, proving that Thai audiences will choose sustainability when available. The second part of the campaign, Grow Green Together, was a media trip and supporting activity in the north of Thailand, bringing together influential media and key opinion leaders to experience this sustainable travel option and amplify communications about this project. The campaign reached over 482 million people on social media platforms, with 194,000 engaging with campaign content. Thai consumers want to prioritize sustainability, and Booking.com's Grow Green project means they can, even when on vacation. Mr. Pong Pan, A Grow Green Stay guest said, "Personally, I would prefer to stay in accommodations that have sustainable practices because I have been trying to be more sustainable at home. I'm glad to have the opportunity to stay in this sustainable clay house, which has fueled my desire to continue making a positive impact on the environment and society."
So I'm not showing this to brag about that campaign. It's great. I think it won awards, but it's to tell you the story or the facts of how that came to life. Our colleague, the account manager working on that project with Booking.com, I think showed that hope and that positivity and that drive that I was mentioning just a couple of minutes ago. What happened is that you saw that clay house. It's gorgeous. It was hell to build because it was built with sustainably sourced clay just in the wrong season, meaning that it was monsoon and they started construction. They, literally molded clay together to build that shape, and every day it would melt down. So she had to go back for weeks on months during that summer to work with the construction teams, to work with the architects to make it happen. I think that kind of positivity, that kind of drive in the face of challenges which ironically also come from the climate is quite important. So moving on quickly through my last points, we have to engage stakeholders, team members, people who do the work. We have also sometimes to engage people, stakeholders who we did not think about. When you talk about sustainability, everyone thinks that citizens and consumers are ready. They are just waiting for your product to come out. They just want the innovation to change the way we live, consume, happily ever after. But the truth is, with Milo in Thailand, we also had another issue. The brand switched to paper straws. Unfortunately, I don't know if you use paper straws a lot, it's never really great as an experience. It tears down, it becomes all saggy. So they had a lot of negative feedback. So we had to work on campaigns to actually educate, engage communities, consumers into adopting it. So when we talk about sustainability, sometimes the challenges come out of places we didn't expect. Ways to also create impact, and this is where I'm very happy that we're not only talking about climate change, because sometimes it's very easy to think that this is the big elephant in the room, but we forget that social justice is also a huge priority in many of the markets we operate in. And how to solve that is sometimes to go through media and social media. We have this case where, with TikTok in Thailand, during the pandemic, when usually brands come to you, they ask that you use social media to make a splash across a country. It needs to be viral everywhere. Everyone should know about it. But this campaign was very interesting because it was about going super local with social media. So we help people in communities, in provinces, to promote local businesses when it was tough. You couldn't go out, couldn't actually get food easily. So we made sure that they could promote the businesses and make them survive during that season. Wrapping up on my part so that we can have a conversation with Shibani, it's really about intentionality. If you can inject a strategy that goes into execution that then is just supported by a bit of communication, then I think we're achieving something. But it's a huge topic, and I hope that we touched just on the nudge of it that could help us think and develop new projects in the future. Thank you. Hi, Shibani. Yeah.
Thanks, Vu, for that very insightful presentation. So I'm going to keep this short and maybe hand over a few questions to the audience. I wanted to talk about how you mentioned that organizations, when they're talking about their sustainability mission, the intention is good. Often the intention is good. It gets lost in translation, perhaps, and maybe it's not deliberate. So when we are drafting our strategy towards sustainability and as in-house communicators, what do you think we should keep in mind right from the first point of action?
I think it's really about internal stakeholders' engagement. And I'm going back to what I touched on quickly earlier, which is how do we nurture actually a culture? So that's where my role kicks in, put my culture hat on. You need the knowledge and the intention to be shared across departments. And this is usually the main issue across all types of companies I've worked with, family businesses, SMEs, multinationals. Most of the times, the main bottleneck is when you have to get several teams to contribute to a project, say, about sustainability. Someone would probably know a lot about the technical side of it, the program, how do you make things better. Someone might know how to communicate. But without integration, it's very hard to make the two match and produce a positive outcome. And that's when you have the risk of underselling your product or your sustainable project, or overdoing it and sliding into those 7 sins of greenwashing somehow.
Another very important part of communication, I think, now is with our audience segments getting more informed and being very vocal about their opinions, and especially on social media. In the advent of an organization being called out for greenwashing, what would you recommend be the first line of response? Do they apologize? Do they accept it? Or how would they go about it in terms of communicating it?
I think some people here might be better equipped than me to, go with the crisis comes playbook. That's one way you can go. But out there, the tendency could be sometimes to, go confrontational. Not the best solution most of the times. We all know about the Streisand effect. The more you try to confront, the more pushback you get. You can also apologize profusely, but sometimes, what does that lead to? And somewhere in between, you often have the fake apologies that are tailored to just calm things down. I think what we hope to deliver true impact in the future is that those moments become the best engagement moments, the best opportunities for audience engagement for the companies, for the brands. Because there's no better time than when you're being called out, being confronted, to actually embrace, the issue and shift the angle. Put yourselves on the side of people who called you out to identify the problem and make everyone liable of how do we work this issue out? How do we solve it? How do we learn more from communities, consumers, so that we can do better? And in those moments, and there are great case studies out there, I don't have one in mind right now, where brands have been great at turning those situations around. But you want to have the follow-up. I think that's the main thing. If you don't have the follow-up, it's going back into greenwashing.
Right. So I think accepting responsibility is key, right? Rather than always, it doesn't warrant an apology all the time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think it's, there was a formula, just lost it. But it's really about teaming up. It's really about not blaming, not taking the blame. Oh, that's the formula. Don't take the blame personally, but accept the responsibility. I think that's a shift of posture.
So I think I'm going to keep this very short and maybe the last question of mine before I open it up to the audience. You know, in the last few years, ESG comms have changed drastically. How do you see this evolve over the next decade?
What's happening right now is that it's quite siloed. You have B2B comms, corporate comms, and you have consumer labeling and engagement to get them excited about anything you can do about sustainability. But more and more, I don't travel into the future except on Mid-Journey. But you could expect that those two sides of communications converge. Because when the call-outs happen, it is because people see through the two layers. They see through consumer comms and they see through what companies are really doing. So it's interesting when, even in agencies, and I'll bring this up in terms of agency governance, we used to have an industry in comms where things were siloed as well. You would have crisis comms specialists, you would have social media specialists. They rarely would mingle and work together except when there would be, crisis on social media. But by bringing all those disciplines closer together, I think a lot of agencies are now offering more and more of a comprehensive solution to communicate. And when it comes to sustainability, it might be helpful that that convergence happens faster so that there's alignment. Because there's nothing worse than a press release for investors being kind of contradicted by what's happening on the consumer side or vice versa.
Sure, hear you. Any questions from the audience, please? Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Dhruv. I love the idea of corporate vulnerability. And you had a question in the end. Let's move from action. I'm from Godrej. Let's move to action from talk. And I just wanted to hear from you, how do we marry purpose with profit? And I think that's a question that a lot of us will have in the room because the intention is there. A lot of organizations have it. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. A lot of organizations are listed. They have investors, they have shareholders, and every quarter you report your results. And the conversations are about what percentage did you grow by, what is the revenue growth, what is the profit growth. No one's really asking about, okay, your growth was not that great, but you are a very good company that invested in sustainable solutions. However, if the profitability reflects that, right? So you're sustainable, but you also made profit. I think more companies would be encouraged to go down that path. So just wanted your thoughts on how do we really do that, because I think that's going to be important. Thank you.
I think there's probably two sides to that, to the answer to that. One where I'm less expert at, but if you look into it, it might be helpful on that investor side, is new standards. It's starting to emerge that financiers and business leaders are looking at the triple bottom line. So it's about building new indicators that are valid even in the financial reporting model. So that's one direction. I won't go too deep in that because I'm not that expert in the financial side of this. On the corporate communications and kind of brand posture side, there is a way, as a company, so I'm not talking here about the moment you have to report, but I'm talking about how the companies can prepare to change. It's about how the leadership can embed the purpose into the execution of the business model. So to be more concrete, I'll actually take the example of the agency I work in. When the mandate from the founders is to change the way we work, then all your organigram can contribute to it. Once they've done that, they'll keep doing what they do. As an agency, we're hitting like great indicators of growth. We're growing like super fast. So investors or potential investors are looking at us like, not to brag, but very intensely. They like the story about how progressive we are, about how we're challenging the norms of the workplace, about how we're dedicated to topics such as sustainability, diversity, female empowerment, etc. And how we do actually execute that as a company. They like the story, and of course, the next question is, show us your bottom line. So for now, it's imperfect, but I have this example in front of me that a good story that is backed up by facts and programs and feedback and a good transparency about the way that we're growing as a company, that we're growing our people. That story combined to great financial results is key. And I'll just somehow, sorry if I take just 30 more seconds, I'll kind of answer one of the questions, although it might not be my place, from the previous panel. One question was about how do you get a workplace to change drastically towards, let's say, 4 days work week? Or how do you embrace those demands from new generations of workers? What we've started to be able to see shift in our company is that we made the structure mold itself in the image of the people. The culture is everyone. It's not top-down, it's not bottom-up. It's being us as leaders able to identify everything that's happening at the same time. It's daunting. So when you survey for feedback, 70% of your team thinks this. Usually, the reflex would be to work on that. So we just flipped the script and we said, actually, we want to act first for the minority voices, the 10% of people who thought something about the way we work. So by doing that, we're shifting culture, we're making it relevant to the people who work with us, which in turns, apparently, just drives great financial results because they're doing a great work. It's very hard, I don't think there are indicators, and I haven't invented it yet, sorry, to show that connection. How do you connect that work you did in terms of culture with the financial results? For now, all we can do is to show the parallel. I hope this answers your question.
Right, I think that's our time, Vu. So we're around. I think you can divert your questions to him once after we're done. But thank you so much for our discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Shibani. Thanks, everyone. It's been great.